piece of history that harkens back to the days when Lake Champlain was the battleground for a revolution, a war that secured American independence. Today, pictures of the last warship from the fleet of Benedict Arnold were released to the public.
This boat is so special to the American story. This boat is so clearly under threat that this boat ought to be recovered, conserved, and put on permanent exhibition for the public as a touchstone to our early history. So in 1775, Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys, with a sidebar for Benedict Arnold, seized Lake Champlain by seizing the forts and the large boats. And so they are masters of the lake, which is really important at that time. And so they control the lake. The British are surprised because they didn't know there was a war going on, the ones who were up here anyway. They were frustrated. They wanted to get back control of the strategic waterway. And they meet on October 11th. And that's a 5-hour engagement, every bit as swashbuckling and horrific as naval fleets and that kind of combat was in the 18th century. Cannon fire, splinters, men ripped apart and killed, big casualties on the American side. 10% of the crew is killed and wounded. The only reason the British and the Americans stopped fighting is because it got too dark to see each other. And so darkness ends the engagement. The British pull back to create a blockade so they can keep the Americans where they are, because that's where they want them. They know that the next day they're going to re-engage this ragtag fleet of row galleys, capture British boats, and gunboats, 8 gunboats. And so they form a blockade at the southern end of Valcour Island, that channel. And Arnold stops, has a council of war, and calls his senior officers over and says, 10% of our guys are gone. We've expended 3/4 of our ammunition. What do you think we ought to do? And the plan becomes, and it's really Arnold's plan, let's escape. Now that we see what the British have put on the water, the only thing we can really do is escape to fight again. And so he, in one of the more remarkable events within this remarkable event, he rows silently his fleet, single file, with a shrouded light in the back of each vessel to guide the next one coming, past that British blockade that's been set up to stop him. And on that retreat, his boats are barely floating. I mean, they've just had a 5-hour cannon engagement with the British. This is an escape for survival. And on that escape, 2 other boats are found to be unable to be kept up. And so the choice is to abandon them during the retreat, because Arnold actually makes it past the blockade. Now he's rowing and sailing, hell-bent to get back to Fort Ticonderoga, Mount Independence, and the protection of those guns. And 2 boats can't make it, so they're abandoned. When a ship goes down as a true shipwreck, it's got all the material culture of its day, the technology of its day, the use of its day. And this particular boat was a warship built under the auspices of Benedict Arnold to fight the British and hold Lake Champlain. And she went to the bottom, we now know, perfectly upright into very deep water, and sits now in very deep water as she landed, on her hull, with her mast still standing full height, and her bow cannon still searching for the enemy.